Marcus Chen stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, his hands gripping the cold porcelain sink until his knuckles turned white. The words his father had spoken just minutes ago echoed in his mind like a broken record. An arranged marriage, to someone he had never met. In 3 weeks, the successful software engineer had built his life on logic, careful planning, and personal choice. At 28, he had climbed the corporate ladder at a prestigious tech company in San Francisco, earned a 6-figure salary, and enjoyed the freedom that came with being single in one of America's most vibrant cities. The last thing he had expected was to receive a phone call that would turn his world completely upside down. His father, David Chen, had immigrated to the United States from Taiwan 30 years ago, with nothing but determination and traditional values deeply rooted in his heart. Despite building a successful import business in California, David had never fully embraced American customs, especially when it came to marriage and family traditions. For years, he had watched his son focus solely on career advancement while completely ignoring what David considered the most important aspect of life: finding a suitable wife and starting a family. The arrangement had been in the works for months, though Marcus knew nothing about it. David had been in contact with his old friend, James Liu, who lived in New York and owned a chain of restaurants across the East Coast. James had a daughter, Elena, who was 26 years old, held a master's degree in international business, and according to her father, possessed all the qualities that would make her an excellent wife for a successful young man like Marcus. Marcus emerged from the bathroom and found his father sitting calmly at the kitchen table, sipping green tea as if he had just discussed the weather instead of his son's future. The older man's expression was serene, showing no signs of understanding the emotional tornado he had just unleashed. "You cannot be serious about this," Marcus said, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "This is 2024. Not 1924. People don't arrange marriages anymore. Especially not in America." David set down his teacup with deliberate precision and looked at his son with the same steady gaze that had helped him navigate countless business negotiations over the decades. "You have had 28 years to find someone suitable on your own. And what do you have to show for it? A series of meaningless relationships with women who care more about your bank account than building a life together." The accusation stung because it contained more truth than Marcus wanted to admit. His dating life had indeed been a series of short-term relationships with ambitious women who seemed more interested in his career prospects than in him as a person. But that didn't justify his father's extreme solution. "Maybe I haven't found the right person yet. But that doesn't mean you get to choose for me," Marcus replied, pacing around the living room of his modern apartment. "What about love? What about compatibility? What about the fact that I might actually want to know the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with?" David's expression remained unchanged. "Love will grow with time and mutual respect. Your mother and I barely knew each other when we married. And we have been happy together for 32 years. Elena Liu is educated, comes from a good family, and shares our cultural values. What more do you need?" "I need to choose my own wife," Marcus shouted, immediately regretting the outburst when he saw the flash of disappointment cross his father's face. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside. David stood up slowly, his movements carrying the weight of years and the burden of immigrant parents who had sacrificed everything for their children's success, only to watch those children drift away from the values they held dear. "James Liu has already spoken to his daughter," David said quietly. "She has agreed to the arrangement. The families will meet in 2 weeks to discuss the details. And if all goes well, the wedding will take place within a month. This decision is final, Marcus. You will do this for the honor of our family, or you will no longer be considered my son." The ultimatum hit Marcus like a physical blow. His relationship with his father had always been complicated, built on respect and obligation rather than the easy affection he saw in American families. But David had never threatened to disown him before. The old man was serious, and Marcus knew him well enough to understand that he would follow through on his threat. Marcus spent the next 3 days in a state of emotional chaos. He called in sick to work, something he had never done in his 5-year career at the company. He researched Elena Liu online, finding only a professional LinkedIn profile and a few social media accounts set to private. The limited information revealed that she worked as a marketing director for a luxury hotel chain in Manhattan, had graduated summa cum laude from Columbia University, and appeared to live a quiet, private life, away from the digital spotlight that consumed most people their age. He considered rebelling completely. Perhaps moving to another city, or even another country, to escape his father's expectations. But as the days passed, Marcus found himself thinking about the sacrifices David had made to give him the opportunities he now enjoyed. The man had worked 16-hour days for decades, sent Marcus to the best schools, and never asked for anything in return except respect for the traditions that had guided their family through generations of challenges. On Thursday evening, Marcus received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was soft, slightly nervous, with just a hint of a New York accent. "Hello, Marcus. This is Elena Liu. I think we should probably talk." His heart started racing. This was the first real moment when the abstract concept of an arranged marriage became a conversation with an actual human being who was apparently going to become his wife, whether he wanted it or not. "I suppose we should," he managed to reply, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "I know this situation is unusual for both of us," Elena continued. "I was wondering if you might be free to meet for dinner this Saturday. Somewhere neutral, where we can talk honestly about what we're both facing." Marcus was surprised by her directness and the calm, rational tone of her voice. He had expected either complete submission to their father's wishes or angry resistance similar to his own initial reaction. Instead, Elena sounded like someone who was approaching this challenge with the same practical mindset he tried to bring to his professional life. "Yes," he heard himself saying, "I think that would be a good idea." They agreed to meet at a restaurant in downtown San Francisco, halfway between his apartment and the airport, where Elena would be flying in from New York. As Marcus hung up the phone, he realized that his life had just taken another unexpected turn. In 3 days, he would be sitting across from a complete stranger, discussing the possibility of spending the rest of their lives together. Saturday arrived faster than Marcus had anticipated. He changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a button-down shirt, trying to strike a balance between casual and respectful. The restaurant Elena had chosen was an upscale Italian place in the financial district, busy enough to provide privacy through ambient noise, but intimate enough for serious conversation. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early and requested a corner table, his palms sweating despite the air conditioning. He had imagined this moment countless times over the past 3 days, creating various scenarios in his mind about what Elena might be like. Would she be a shy, traditional woman who simply obeyed her father's wishes? Would she be angry and resentful about the arrangement? Would they have anything in common besides their shared predicament? When Elena walked through the restaurant door, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was nothing like the mental image he had constructed from her limited online presence. Tall and elegant, with long black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, she wore a navy blue dress that was professional yet flattering. But what struck him most was her confident posture and the way she scanned the room with intelligent, observant eyes until she spotted him. As she approached the table, Marcus stood awkwardly, unsure of the appropriate greeting for someone who was technically a stranger but also his potential future wife. Elena solved the dilemma by extending her hand with a warm smile. "You must be Marcus. I'm Elena. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Her handshake was firm and confident, and her voice in person carried the same calm intelligence he had noticed during their phone conversation. As they settled into their seats, Marcus found himself studying her face, looking for clues about her personality, and trying to understand how she was handling this bizarre situation. "I have to admit," Elena said after they had ordered their meals, "when my father first told me about this arrangement, I thought he had completely lost his mind. I mean, who does this anymore? But then I started thinking about it differently." "Differently how?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Elena leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more animated. "Well, think about it rationally. Traditional dating hasn't exactly been working out brilliantly for either of us, right? I've been in 3 serious relationships over the past 5 years, and they all ended for essentially the same reason. The guys were either intimidated by my career ambitions, couldn't handle the fact that I sometimes work 60-hour weeks, or were looking for someone who would prioritize their goals over their own. Marcus nodded, surprised by how closely her dating experiences mirrored his own struggles with finding someone who understood the demands of a successful career. On the other hand, Elena continued, our fathers have known each other for over 20 years. They've built successful businesses, maintained stable marriages, and raised children who turned out reasonably well, despite our current circumstances. Maybe their judgment about compatibility isn't as outdated as we initially thought. The conversation continued through appetizers and into their main courses. Marcus discovered that Elena had a sharp wit and an unexpected sense of humor about their situation. She told him about her work in hotel marketing, describing complex international projects with the same passion he felt when discussing software development. She had traveled to over 20 countries for work, spoke 3 languages fluently, and had recently completed a marathon in under 4 hours. More importantly, Elena seemed to understand the pressure of living up to immigrant parents' expectations while trying to build an independent life in America. Her father had worked as a dishwasher when he first arrived from Hong Kong, eventually saving enough money to buy his first restaurant. Like Marcus, Elena had grown up straddling 2 cultures, appreciating her heritage while sometimes feeling constrained by traditional expectations. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus said, as they waited for dessert. I think we're past the point of worrying about personal boundaries. Elena replied with a smile. Why did you agree to this? I mean, really. You're obviously successful, intelligent, and attractive. You could date anyone you wanted. Why would you let your father arrange your marriage? Elena was quiet for a moment, twirling her wine glass between her fingers as she considered the question. Honestly, I'm tired of dating men who see my success as either a threat or a trophy. I want a partner, not someone who's competing with me or trying to change me. And there's something appealing about the idea of building a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values rather than just physical attraction or romantic fantasy. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. Plus, I've done some research on you over the past few days. Your LinkedIn profile is impressive. Your company has an excellent reputation. And from what I could find online, you seem like a decent person. That's more than I could say about my last boyfriend, who I dated for 8 months before discovering he was still married to someone else. Marcus nearly choked on his wine. Seriously? Unfortunately, yes. So you'll forgive me if I'm a little skeptical about the effectiveness of traditional romantic courtship. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying Elena's company. She was direct without being aggressive, thoughtful without being overly serious, and she seemed to share his pragmatic approach to life's challenges. When she laughed at his stories about debugging software at 3 in the morning, he realized that he hadn't felt this comfortable with a woman in years. But the underlying tension of their situation remained. They were essentially interviewing each other for the role of spouse, and the artificial nature of the process created an odd dynamic. Every conversation topic carried extra weight, because they were trying to determine not just whether they liked each other, but whether they could build a life together. So what happens now? Elena asked as they finished their meal. Do we shake hands and agree to proceed with the arrangement? Do we need more time to think about it? I have to admit, this whole process feels a bit surreal. Quote, Marcus had been wondering the same thing. The evening had gone much better than he had expected, but he still felt like he was making one of the most important decisions of his life, based on a single dinner conversation. Would you like to take a walk? He suggested. There's a nice area along the waterfront. Maybe we could continue talking somewhere less formal. Elena agreed, and they spent the next hour strolling along the Embarcadero as the sun set over San Francisco Bay. The conversation flowed more naturally in the relaxed setting, covering everything from their childhood memories, to their professional goals, to their thoughts about family and the future. I have a confession, Elena said, as they paused to watch the lights, beginning to twinkle across the water. When I agreed to meet you tonight, I was planning to suggest that we go through with a fake engagement to satisfy our fathers, then quietly break it off after a few months, once the pressure died down. Marcus turned to look at her, surprised by the admission. What changed your mind? You did, she said simply. I like you, Marcus. I like the way you think, the way you approach problems. Even the way you laugh at your own jokes when you think they're particularly clever. I find myself genuinely curious about what it would be like to be married to you." The honesty of her statement caught Marcus off guard. He had been thinking similar thoughts throughout the evening but hadn't expected Elena to voice them so directly. "I like you too," he admitted. "More than I thought I would. But this still feels like we're rushing into something enormous, based on very limited information." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "What if we approach this like a business partnership? We both want similar things from life: career success, financial stability, a family eventually, and a partner who understands our ambitions. We're both tired of the traditional dating scene, and we both respect our families enough to consider their input seriously." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "What if we got engaged as our fathers want, but took the next few months to really get to know each other? We could spend weekends together, either here or in New York. We could introduce each other to our friends, see how we function as a couple in different social situations. If it works out, great. If not, we call it off before any real damage is done." Marcus considered the proposal. It was rational, practical, and gave them both an exit strategy if the arrangement didn't work out. It also bought them time to explore whatever connection they had discovered over dinner, without the immediate pressure of a wedding date looming over their heads. "There's one more thing," Elena added, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "I think we should be honest with each other about the physical aspect of this relationship. I mean, we're both adults, and if we're going to make this work, we need to know whether we're attracted to each other beyond just intellectual compatibility." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. The question of physical attraction had been in the back of his mind all evening. But he hadn't expected Elena to address it so directly. "And what's your assessment so far?" he asked, surprised by his own boldness. Elena smiled, a genuinely warm expression that transformed her entire face. "I think we'll figure that part out just fine." As they walked back toward the restaurant where Elena had left her rental car, Marcus realized that his perspective on the arranged marriage had shifted completely. What had started as a family obligation that filled him with dread had become an intriguing possibility that he actually wanted to explore. For the first time in 3 days, he felt optimistic about his future. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same bathroom where he had first learned about the arranged marriage. But this time, he was adjusting his tie with steady hands and a genuine smile on his face. The man looking back at him in the mirror bore little resemblance to the angry, confused person who had gripped the sink in desperation half a year ago. The months following his first dinner with Elena had unfolded in ways that neither of them could have predicted. Their systematic approach to getting to know each other had gradually evolved into something that felt surprisingly natural and comfortable. Elena had visited San Francisco every other weekend, while Marcus had made regular trips to New York. What started as carefully planned activities designed to test their compatibility had become spontaneous adventures that they both eagerly anticipated. The breakthrough moment had come during Elena's third visit to California. Marcus had planned a hiking trip to Yosemite, thinking it would be a good way to see how they handled physical challenges together. Halfway up the trail, Elena had twisted her ankle on a loose rock. Instead of complaining or suggesting they turn back, she had laughed at her clumsiness and insisted they continue to their destination. Marcus had been amazed by her determination and positive attitude, while Elena had been touched by his patience and willingness to slow their pace to accommodate her injury. That evening, sitting by their campfire and sharing stories about their worst childhood mishaps, something had shifted between them. The artificial politeness and careful consideration that had marked their early interactions melted away, replaced by genuine affection and easy companionship. When Marcus had gently cleaned and bandaged Elena's ankle, she had kissed him for the first time. It wasn't the passionate, movie-style kiss of romantic comedies, but it felt real and right, in a way that surprised them both. Their physical relationship had developed gradually and naturally from that point forward. Unlike the intense, often confusing attraction that had characterized Marcus's previous relationships, his feelings for Elena grew steadily stronger based on genuine admiration and respect. She challenged him intellectually, supported his career ambitions, and had a way of making even mundane activities feel enjoyable when they were together. Elena had proven to be everything her father had claimed, and much more. She was indeed intelligent, ambitious, and grounded in strong values. But she also had qualities that couldn't be captured in a parental sales pitch. She had a talent for making friends wherever she went, a love of trying new foods that had introduced Marcus to cuisines he never would have discovered on his own, and an unexpected passion for terrible horror movies that she watched while providing running commentary on the poor special effects. More importantly, Elena understood the unique pressures of their shared cultural background without being constrained by traditional gender roles. She expected to maintain her career after marriage, wanted to travel extensively, and had clear opinions about how they should handle finances, household responsibilities, and future decisions about children. Marcus found her directness refreshing after years of dating women who seemed to expect him to read their minds about important life decisions. Their families had been thrilled by the successful match, though both Marcus and Elena had been careful to set boundaries about parental involvement in their relationship. They had made it clear that while they appreciated their father's introduction, the development of their marriage would be their own responsibility. David Chen had initially struggled with his son's insistence on autonomy, but had gradually come to respect the mature way Marcus and Elena handled their unconventional courtship. The wedding planning process had revealed another dimension of their compatibility. Instead of getting caught up in expensive traditions or elaborate ceremonies, they had focused on creating an event that reflected their personalities and values. The guest list was deliberately small, including only close family and friends. The venue was a beautiful garden in Napa Valley that specialized in intimate celebrations. Elena had chosen a simple but elegant dress that she could actually move comfortably in, while Marcus had selected a classic suit that he would be able to wear again for future special occasions. Perhaps most importantly, they had spent considerable time discussing their expectations for married life. Unlike many couples who avoided difficult conversations until after the wedding, Marcus and Elena had methodically worked through potential areas of conflict. They had agreed on financial management strategies, discussed career priorities and potential relocations, talked through their thoughts about having children and how they would handle childcare responsibilities, and even addressed seemingly minor issues like household chores and holiday celebrations with extended family. These conversations had sometimes been challenging, revealing differences of opinion that required compromise and negotiation. Elena preferred to save money aggressively for future investments, while Marcus was more inclined to spend on experiences and travel. Marcus was naturally introverted and needed quiet time to recharge after social events, while Elena thrived on interaction and sometimes found his need for solitude difficult to understand. But they had approached each disagreement as a problem to be solved together rather than a fundamental incompatibility that threatened their relationship. 3 weeks before the wedding, Elena had moved to San Francisco permanently, taking a position with a luxury hotel group that had been trying to recruit her for over a year. The transition had been smoother than either of them expected. Elena's marketing expertise and extensive travel experience made her a valuable addition to her new company, while her presence in Marcus's daily life felt natural rather than disruptive. They had found an apartment together in Pacific Heights that met both of their needs, close enough to downtown for Elena's work commute, with enough space for Marcus to set up a home office for his freelance consulting projects, and near the hiking trails they both enjoyed exploring on weekends. The process of combining their possessions and decorating their shared space had been another test of their compatibility, one they had passed with surprising ease. Now, as Marcus made final adjustments to his appearance before heading to the wedding venue, he reflected on how dramatically his perspective had changed. The arranged marriage that had initially felt like a prison sentence had become the foundation for the most stable and satisfying relationship of his life. Elena wasn't just someone he was attracted to or someone who shared his interests. She was a true partner who made him want to be a better version of himself. The wedding ceremony itself was everything Marcus and Elena had hoped it would be. Their vows were personal and heartfelt, focusing on the journey they had already begun together, rather than abstract promises about an uncertain future. When they exchanged rings, Marcus felt a sense of completion that surprised him with its intensity. The reception was a joyful celebration that reflected the unique story of their relationship. Elena's maid of honor, her college roommate Sarah, gave a speech about how Elena had initially described the arranged marriage as a crazy experiment that might actually work. Marcus's best man, his college friend and current business partner Jake, talked about watching Marcus transform from a workaholic who avoided serious relationships into someone who eagerly planned weekend trips and talked constantly about his fascinating future wife. But the most memorable moment came when David Chen and James Liu spoke together about the friendship that had led to their children's introduction. The two men, now in their 60s, talked about their hopes for Marcus and Elena's future, while acknowledging that the young couple had ultimately created something entirely their own. "We introduced them," David said, his English still carrying traces of his Taiwanese accent after 3 decades in America. "But they chose each other. That is how it should be." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Marcus and Elena found themselves alone on the hotel balcony overlooking the valley where they had just celebrated their wedding. Elena had changed into comfortable shoes but was still wearing her wedding dress, while Marcus had loosened his tie and rolled up his shirt sleeves. "So," Elena said, leaning against the railing and looking out at the stars, "how do you feel about being married to a complete stranger?" Marcus laughed, remembering how that phrase had filled him with dread just 6 months earlier. "I feel like I married someone I know better than anyone else in the world, even though our fathers introduced us." He joined her at the railing, taking her hand in his. "I keep thinking about something you said during our first dinner. You asked why we should let our fathers choose our spouses, but maybe the better question is why we were so convinced that our own judgment was superior to theirs when our track record with relationships was pretty terrible." Elena smiled, squeezing his hand. "I think the secret was that they didn't really choose for us. They just introduced us and let us figure out the rest. If we hadn't genuinely liked each other, no amount of parental pressure would have made this work." She paused, turning to face him directly. "I love you, Marcus Chen. Not because my father arranged for me to marry you, but because you're kind and funny and ambitious, and you make me feel like the best version of myself." "I love you too," Marcus replied, meaning it completely. "And I'm grateful to our fathers for being smart enough to see something that we might never have discovered on our own." As they stood together under the California stars, Marcus realized that their story would probably sound impossible to most people. The idea of an arranged marriage leading to genuine love seemed outdated, impractical, and contrary to everything modern culture taught about romance and relationships. But their experience had taught him that love could develop in many different ways, and that sometimes the most unconventional beginnings could lead to the most satisfying outcomes. 1 year later, Marcus and Elena would celebrate their first wedding anniversary with a trip to Taiwan and Hong Kong, where they would meet extended family members and explore the cultural heritage that had ultimately brought them together. Elena would be promoted to regional marketing director, while Marcus would launch his own software consulting firm with Elena as his business partner and chief marketing strategist. They would buy a house with a large garden where they could host dinner parties for the diverse group of friends they had accumulated from both their professional and personal lives. But all of that was still in the future. For now, they were simply two people who had discovered that sometimes the most important journeys begin not with passionate attraction or romantic destiny, but with open minds, honest communication, and the willingness to let love grow naturally from mutual respect and shared dreams. The arranged marriage that had shocked everyone had ultimately shocked no one more than Marcus and Elena themselves, who had learned that the best relationships are built not on dramatic gestures or perfect compatibility, but on the daily choice to support each other's growth and happiness. Their love story would never fit the traditional romantic narrative, but it was entirely their own, and that made it perfect for them. The prospect terrified and intrigued him in equal measure.